Hi, my name is Suzanne Freeman, and I'm the Crime Prevention Specialist with Savage Police Department, and thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about mail theft and the recent rise in the community. We have a special guest today, Detective Sergeant Mike Schultz, who is kind of our go-to person when it comes to mail theft and the questions that we have about it. So you're my first guest on my new show.
Honored.
So you should be honored, and hopefully we have you coming around all the time now, maybe co-hosting, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Anyways, tell me a little bit more about yourself since this is your first time on the show, and let the community know who you are.
Well, my name's Mike Schultz. I'm originally from Duluth, Minnesota. Okay. Got interested in law enforcement, went to UMD. Okay. From UMD, I began working as a prison guard in Moose Lake. That wasn't a really fun job.
I can't imagine.
After about a year and a half, I got hired by the Appleton, Wisconsin Police Department. Okay. Went there, went through their 10-week academy, worked there for 6 years, and then I married a gal from Hermantown. Once she got pregnant with our twins, we decided to move back to Minnesota and found myself in Savage.
Alrighty. So how long have you been in Savage?
Just over 16 years now.
And how long have you been a detective
sergeant? 2 years.
2 years. Mm-hmm. You like it?
It's interesting.
It's interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, great. So the questions I have today is we've had a lot of questions recently from the community about mail theft and how people can prevent it and why is there a recent rise in it, and just want to be bringing more education out there for Savage. So I guess we'll take it away with you letting us know is there a recent rise in mail theft here?
Yes, we've seen a very high spike in mail theft lately. Okay. Approximately 2 years ago, we had a crew in town that was responsible for a lot of mail theft and check making. Detective Brinkman worked heavily with the Bloomington Police Department on that. Okay. We ended up doing 2 warrants and made several arrests. Then it died down for quite a bit. But for whatever reason, starting this summer, we saw a huge uptake. Okay. In Savage, we basically have, or had, 3 groups working the area. We had some people that lived in Savage, but luckily did most of their crime in the far west suburbs. Okay. Why, I'm not sure. But I know Wright County has done an extensive investigation on these folks. There was another group that lived on the Burnsville-Savage border. Their operation was the red flagging, as we call it, where citizens put their mail in the mailbox, put the red flag up. Oh. This group would hit those mailboxes looking for outbound checks. They take that information. Well, this group wasn't as sophisticated. They would do a lot of writing over the checks to make it look like they made it. I think most clerks would look at a check and say, no, this okay. doesn't even look close, but they did get away with it quite a bit. Yeah. We did an extensive investigation with Burnsville and Lakeville on this group, and currently their leader is in Dakota County Jail and will be for some time. And then unfortunately we have a group that's been hitting south of the river from Hastings all the way out into Shakopee. Okay. They have taken about 3 months of my life. Oh, really? Yeah. Pretty much nonstop. The leader of this group is currently in jail. Okay. What this group does different than red flaggers is they like to go to industrial areas on weekends when it's more likely there's nobody around. Right. And they go after the checks that are being sent to those particular businesses. Now, unfortunately, the leader of this group got a hold of a large amount of checks at an industrial area here in Savage. And then a few weeks later, people start noticing my check didn't clear or a large check came in from Walmart. Okay. So when that happens, we start backtracking, collecting. We contact the big box stores usually are involved. We contact them and get surveillance video and documentation, of course, from the banks and the victim and the store itself. With those videos, we pull still pictures from them and then we'll send them out to all the detectives that work in the metro area.
Okay. So this
And-
one as far as up to Hastings.
Yes.
Okay.
And this subject was well known to several detectives. So then we continued to build our case. It doesn't happen overnight with
Right.
mail theft. It takes a long time to work with the banks, work with the realtors, and even the victims to get all the information we need to set up a good case. As I was working that case, I developed enough information to get a search warrant for this gentleman's vehicle or any hotel room that he might be in. Luckily, with the assistance of the St. Paul Police Department
Yep.
that offered officers to help me, we were able to track him entering a local entertainment area and pulled him over, arrested him, took him and his vehicle back to our station. We searched the vehicle and found numerous personal checks that were stolen from a business in Buffalo, Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
So the last 3 weeks, it's been calling those victims,
Right.
getting the information from them, the videotape, the documentation. So the first part of my case was probably 25 victims and about $11,000 worth of bogus checks. The second part of my investigation is probably up to 65 victims and looking probably about $35,000.
Oh, wow.
So they make a lot of money in a short period of time.
Yeah.
They generally like to go to a big box store and buy vanilla credit cards,
Okay.
usually for a smaller amount like $200, so it doesn't look suspicious. And then by the time everybody figures out this is fake, they have that $200 Visa vanilla.
Yeah.
Sometimes what they'll do too is buy expensive electronics,
Okay.
and they purchase it, they leave, they might go to another branch of that same big box, return it for cash. So now they got cash.
Right.
As you can imagine, they're supporting bad habits with this money,
Yeah.
which doesn't help. But our case continues to develop every day, and I believe in about 2 or 3 weeks I'll be presenting the case to a federal prosecutor to see if we can have at least the ringleader charged federally, which garners stiffer penalties.
Right.
When we did the warrant, he also had the computer, the printer, software for making the checks,
Yeah.
a laminator, a paper cutter, because he would make fake IDs
Okay.
and to make it look more legitimate if he was asked by a
Right.
cashier. So that's basically what I've been working
We're
on.
hoping to get him.
Yeah, well, he's currently,
Yeah, well, we got him now, but.
yep, he's been charged in Scott County, but
Okay.
as this continues and the amounts grow,
Yeah.
it looks more like a possibility that we can get federal charges on him.
Okay.
What these folks do, they're not interested in your name or your address, where you live, or what your check's for. They're looking for your routing number and your account number.
Okay.
With that information, they just print off new checks in their fake alias name and will hit a dozen stores in one day and make thousands of dollars.
So do you suggest that people pay online for things then instead of mailing their checks to like their
They certainly can.
electric company? And-
Yes, my wife does it.
Okay.
I'm not really comfortable with it because it seems no matter what, there's always some way somebody's going to
Someone,
gain
yeah.
access. But it seems to be getting a lot safer. But if you do write a personal check, I would suggest dropping it off at the post office.
Okay.
Do not put it in your mail with the red flag.
Right.
Because eventually it will get stolen.
Okay.
And it can be very difficult to clear up that situation with banks.
Okay.
Especially if you don't realize that you've been a victim.
Right.
It might take, some people only get a monthly statement, then they realize it.
Oh, okay.
Well, sometimes the company's already put you into collections, and you
Right.
didn't even know that you had this charge until the last minute.
Right.
And once it gets to collections point, it can get really difficult.
Yeah.
Because
I
apparently
imagine.
they call a lot and send lots
Yeah,
of letters
right.
and make lots of threats.
Right.
So I definitely suggest that you keep an eye on your account daily if you can, Anything suspicious, call your bank right away.
Okay.
If you think you are a victim, call your local police department.
Okay.
We take it from there, and if it gets big enough, such in this last case I'm working, we might go federally with it, but usually we keep it at the county level here in Scott County.
Awesome. Do you have any other tips for people trying to prevent this from happening to them?
Well, like I said, definitely don't put the mail
Right.
in the mailbox with the red flag. And if you own a business or a part of a business, suggest that you don't have your mail delivered on weekends.
Okay.
Because in both these cases, where these checks have equaled probably $60,000 in loss, or probably will get there, they were both on Saturdays when nobody was around.
Right. That makes sense. Do you work with the postal inspectors a lot, or if someone feel like they're a victim of mail theft, they should call the local police department?
Yes, I would
Okay.
call the local police department. I have worked with the postal inspectors on this case. They certainly have offered really good advice
Yes.
and assistance. It's not something we do every day,
Right.
obviously, but they're a pretty small group too. They only have so many agents that
Right.
have to cover the whole state.
Okay.
So we're trying to help them out as much as we can by collecting all this evidence and video surveillance and information to assist them in presenting the case to the feds.
Interesting. I know when I think of mail theft, I always think about like the Christmas season and people stealing packages, but it's a lot more than just that.
Mm-hmm.
It's people taking your house if the red flag's up, or even just taking your information from if you're sending it to like your electric company.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely goes a lot more in depth than just trying to get a package at your house. So
Yes, and
there's more to it.
the porch pirates,
Yeah.
I guess they've been
Is
termed.
that what they're called?
Yeah, they were pretty active this year, much more
Yeah.
than the last few years. So that's something to consider in the future too.
Right.
Is that does happen and has happened quite a bit lately.
Maybe get your packages mailed to your work
Yes.
instead, so someone
Yep.
can retrieve it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, awesome. Thank you for being my guest today, my first
Sure.
guest, and going over mail theft, since I know this is a big thing with the community and people need to think of ways to prevent it and moving forward. And hopefully it takes a little time off your hands if it's as easy as just not putting your check in the mailbox
Yeah.
and just dropping it off at the post office instead. So awesome. Thank you so much. And
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and we'll have you again in the future. So thanks for tuning in to the show, and I will see you next time.